Hello! Very recently I did my review of the Creality Ender Free V3 KE, which is sitting right there, ready to go again. And during that time I had a few adhesion problems, one of which when I was printing a big vase and I thought everything was going well, so I left it for 2 hours and it printed out a great big lump of spaghetti. One of the issues with it was if I just plugged a regular USB camera in, it didn't seem to work with the web interface, so I couldn't monitor it. And so I missed the fact it was turning into a spaghetti monster. There is a camera I noticed that Creality do called the Nebula Camera. And I was interested in putting my own camera in because these are normally pretty expensive. But I thought, oh, this is actually quite cheap. It's £29 in the UK, which is probably 20, 30 something dollars in the US and stuff. And this has a lot of interesting features. Obviously, one thing is it's compatible with the printer, so if I plug it in, it should give me a live view. I should be able to record time lapses, be able to look on my phone at any time just to make sure what the printer's doing. That's great. The other thing is it's got night vision, so if you saw my printer review, I tried to do a time lapse on the GoPro, and then occasionally I forgot I was doing that and turned the light off in my office. So we had some nicely lit things and sometimes it went to darkness. So the idea of this is you can see it and you don't have to keep your lights on, which is nice. And the most interesting feature about it is got some AI in it which will attempt to recognise that something's spaghettied and stop the print if that happens. Or does it stop the print? Does it alert me? It does something. And I thought that's very interesting. We should give that a go. Let's get it out of the box, see what it contains, and then we'll figure out how to hook up to the printer and force a print to go wrong. So in the box we get the camera itself. It's got this little tripod screw thread underneath it. You can tilt it back and forth, and you've got a manual focus ring here, which we obviously need to connect up to the printer and then have a look at the screen, see what we're doing. Also, because there's not necessarily anywhere to put this, depends on the printer of course, I've got a bed that moves back and forth, so it's not like I can mount it anywhere like this. Comes with this little tripod thing, so you can screw in there and obviously stand it up, slightly raise it so it can sort of see onto the bed. And we could still, oh, the space twists as well. So yeah, that should give us a thing. And you've got these brief instructions which just basically say put that on there and plug it in. All we have to do here is plug the USB into the little screen which has some USB ports. Okay, so what I did, I plugged it in to the USB here, and I sort of, it wasn't quite long enough to go around the outside and it was a bit awkward here, so I just lifted the printer up and poked it underneath. There's some feet, so there's plenty of room, and put that on the tripod. And I thought I'd put a print in the middle just to help focus on, and then I twiddled the ring while I had this on the computer. As far as that goes, this is a Creality print. You can see it comes up there, and if we move that out of the way, we've just logged on with the generic IP address, and that gives us this as well, which is all good. I couldn't see any options here to do a time lapse. I think the option for that is only from Creality Print. If we have a look at that. So if we go into Creality Cloud and go to the Ender, it takes a little while to first establish the link. And again, you can see it there. Again, I don't have options, obviously, to say start doing a screen record. I think you can only do it when you start printing, but at least you can say print from a local file, and if you do that it will go and look at the local files. And again, if we were to go into Safari on my iPhone and go to the 192.168.1.53 address and go down here, we can see it here, although a bit squished unless we turn it around like that. So that's all good. So I guess I should load in some filament and start printing. You can see there's no filament in there at the moment. I take it out when I'm not doing anything with it for a few days, just so it doesn't dry out. And what I noticed about that is we get this little thing on Creality Print that tells us that you can't read it because it's red, but it says, hey, you haven't got any filament, reload some. So I'm going to load some in, and we'll try and print something, see if we can do a time lapse, probably using Creality Cloud, but I'll see what happens from here. And yeah, we'll take it from there. So I've printed a local file from Creality Print. Hopefully this means I get a recording, because I can see over in the top left of our window there, we've got this little flashing light that suggests, you know, maybe it's recording. It's hard to tell. If we look over on the screen there, we get a pretty decent view of it. I mean, I've probably got some utilities where I can figure out how to make a recording here, or I don't know if other open source software implementations have the option to do it, but of course it means I can get in and look at it and see what's happening. Anyway, this one I just want to, you know, sort of work and see what happens. I don't think it's particularly dark if I turn the light off. Let me see. Oh, I take that back, it's pretty dark today. Camera can't focus, and if we look on the screen we can see it's gone to sort of a night vision mode, which is pretty cool. That just swaps over. It's going to make the time-lapse look terrible if we in fact got a time-lapse, but I'll turn the light back on and we'll see what happens. Okay, that printed very nicely. I was able to monitor it in various ways, so let's see if we've got a time-lapse from Creality Cloud. I wasn't sure if Creality Cloud would record the time-lapse, so I thought I'd do a little bit just recording the window to see how that worked. But when I went onto Creality Cloud, it said, yeah, here's your time-lapse. And this is what it looks like, which is quite good. I think it tries to trigger the photo at a particular time to try and keep it still, and it does a fairly good job. You'll notice I'm printing with the white hyper PLA that was included as a little sort of test bit. Didn't have a reel, so I sort of unspooled it and put it around there, which hopefully isn't too twisted. So yeah, let's see what happens. Okay, found this model on Thingiverse called Adhesion Test, and look at it. There are no brims, no nothing. Even the slicer's saying, yeah, this ain't printing. So I fully expect this one to fail, especially printing a hyper PLA at a pretty fast speed. So I thought this would be a handy test to see if the camera picks up if a piece comes off, because what we should get, of course, is just sort of spaghetti coming down. It's quite spread out though, so it'd be interesting to see what it can do. So on this one, I'm just going to land print it. Does the printer then know that it's getting a print and thus records a time-lapse? Don't know. Find out. I mean, yeah, you can see the tiny little blobs it's printing and some difficulty it's getting on the bed adhesion here. I don't think this prints along for this well, but let's see what happens. Okay, might have missed a bit. If I go into here, I know it says print detection with AI, and it's got fault detection and first layer detection is not on. So I suppose what I should do is turn that on and pause printing when it's detected. Now the printing is going, so I don't know if it's going to detect anything. Don't know if I need to say, hey, might have to reprint this. Don't know. Well, the time-lapse doesn't seem to have saved, I guess because I aborted the print. Basically because I wasn't sure if those settings took place. One interesting thing about it is all the problem pieces were over here. We had bad adhesion on here, and then that seemed to it pushed the filament onto that one, and then that came off. These ones around the edges have actually done quite well. They're all quite solid. So possibly I just need to rerun the bed profile to make sure we haven't got any slight changes over here. But I'll run it again and see if we can actually capture the error by the AI camera. Okay, I stopped the print so I could turn on the AI stuff, or what I thought it was. But if I go into settings and say print detection with AI, you'll notice they're not there. And if I turn them back on, say fault detection, say pause printing, come out again, then go back in, it disappears. I don't know what to do. It's like, yeah, I want to pause printing, please, and I want the fault detection to be on. And it's like, no, not doing it. Don't know why. How do you make it work? Will it just work? I don't know. Slightly different plan of attack. I'm going for a long, thin tower. If it successfully goes, I can always just cut it off. I think it's a more instant result than the other ones, but it's just started yet, and it seems to be laying stuff down okay. So let's see what happens. I've no idea if it will work now, because the AI thing seems to turn itself back off again on the app. That was a better idea. If I go into the settings on the actual thing itself and look at AI detection, we can see that we got defect detection, and that's about it. Oh no, we got first layer detection as well, and it says printer suspended due to faults, so that's good. That should do it then, basically. So let's see what happens. Well, typically it's doing a really good job and has no intention of failing, so I might have to, sadly, give it a bit of help here. Like, it's too flexible. There we go. See what happens now. We should start getting a spaghetti going on. I mean, this is a bit harsh of me for doing this, but that's the only way I can really make it happen. Well, we've not detected anything yet, And it's difficult to understand exactly how it should be set up. I mean, is this having a bit of a contrast problem? Because if you look at the display it's getting, you know, there's a lot of wall stuff and cables hanging down and all sorts are in the picture. Can it actively identify what's on the bed and stuff? Unfortunately, there's practically no documentation, so you just can't tell. But hang on, what's just happened? Literally, as I've been talking, this little yellow light has popped up here. And it says, oh, key 101 AI detection paused. Hey, it's worked it out. It's got something. So it's stopped printing. And it says AI pasta detection anomaly. Not calling it spaghetti, but at least we've got it's in the same family. It's all pasta, but we got that much out, which is much better than like hours and hours. That was about 2 minutes of printing. So at this point, you can say resume if it's going to focus on here. You can say resume or stop printing. Obviously, for us, this did not work, so we're going to stop. Yeah, that works. I decided to reprint that in order to test out the night vision mode, and this was like past midnight and the lights off. It's very, very dark, and it does a really good job with presumably its own infrared lights or whatever of lighting up what I'm looking at. This is a very interesting print. It starts good at the bottom. It's so thin you can see it wobbling along the top there. So by the time it finished, the bottom was great. The top was wobbling so much it was really fragile. But it's very interesting how it does the time lapse here. As you can see, they're very smooth down the bottom, and as we move up the top, you can see how much that wobble is going. In fact, I was just sort of seeing how bendy it was, and it snapped there completely because it's barely putting any filament on each other. Very interesting print to do, actually. It's quite unreasonable to expect it to not wobble around, really, when you're doing this sort of thing. So, kind of expected, but interesting. Anyway, the time lapse. I didn't do anything particularly. I just printed it. And then afterwards I looked on Creality Cloud and it was there as a time-lapse, which tells me the printer is probably taking its photos and then uploading to Creality Cloud afterwards, which means it's probably on the printer somewhere. So I decided to log on the printer, and I mentioned about how to set up root access so you could SSH to it. And there's this user data file system which I thought might be relevant. And if I look in there, there's a directory called timelapse, which is interesting. And in there, there's something called main output.h264. So I thought, let's get hold of this this main output.h264 by scping. So if I go in scp root, that's 192.168.1.53, I think that's what it was. And that, and anything to dot Creality 2023 password by default. We can go ahead and grab that file. Now I had a look at the file and you can't play it by default. It doesn't seem to have like a container, but if you put it into something like Handbrake and you go ahead and create an MP4 file from there, which is pretty quick, there's not much to it, you then do end up with this time-lapse file. And you can see it seems to try and take the picture every layer, which I think is quite cool. And this made me think, because you only get a time-lapse on Creality Cloud when the print finishes correctly. So it's obviously there's some logic in there to say the print's completed okay, so let's upload this print. It made me think, could we get a time lapse from a failed print or a cancelled print? So if I try printing something and cancel it off, can I use this method to get my time lapse over? Which I think is worth a try. Okay, well I've just sent the fast benchy boat to it, and as soon as I did that, even though it hasn't started yet, I noticed that the main output.h264 has been removed. So hopefully that's going to create a file and not remove it if I cancel it or the print fails. Okay, so you can see the high-speed benchy. I say high-speed, it's about 19 minutes. That's been going about 10 minutes. Yep, 10 minutes, 8 minutes remaining. And if I look in the directory, I can see that the time-lapse file is growing. So what I'm going to do now is stop it on here, import the print to see if we can still get it. That's saying printing has stopped. Yep, that's given up there, so let's see. Yep, the file's still there, so let's grab hold of it. Okay, this is interesting, because I got the file off the printer and transformed it and got the video. Then I went on Creality Cloud just to check that it didn't appear there, and weirdly enough, it did. Previously, I'd had aborted prints or failed prints that didn't upload. I don't know if it's a bit finicky, or perhaps it just needs more time before I try and reprint something else. Perhaps that's what's going on. But if I look here, I can see the aborted benchy I just did, and that's absolutely fine. I could download that if I want to. And I've also got, which I just assumed wasn't going to be there, the big tower that I sabotaged by knocking it off the bed and then letting the AI detection stop the print. So I've actually got that one as well, which is pretty good. So you've got an option of taking it off locally. It's a shame there's not an option to say, download time lapse from the web interface, so you didn't have to go through this app and stuff. But that's not an option. But you can do it, although it's a bit more of a faff. What a really useful little camera. Now, I wasn't totally convinced about this, but I really like having the ability to look at a time lapse just because. And the fact it can detect a failure is very useful, so you don't have to watch it like a hawk and end up with hours and hours of spaghetti. And the fact I can watch it remotely. I mean, I don't particularly use the Creality Cloud app, but I can just use the web address on my phone. Although if I'm out somewhere else, then I can use the Creality app. But within the house, I can just double check it and it's all good. Or I can change things or print things remotely, that sort of thing, and still be able to keep an eye on it, which is just really cool. It's just a shame it's not it can't mount in a specific area for this particular camera, or it's not built in, which I think would be really useful. Now, normally I would whinge about the fact, why can't I plug in any old USB camera, which perhaps you can if you experiment with the different open source software. But the fact this is only £29 makes it quite reasonable. It's pretty much I would say it's a must-have. If you get a printer like this, you might as well add something like this at the same time, and then you've always got a way of monitoring and checking that things don't go wrong. And if stuff does go wrong, then at least you can see it happened if you look at the time lapse. Bit weird about how things are uploaded to Creality Cloud. I was convinced it wasn't uploading stuff when the print went wrong or it was aborted, but either I wasn't giving it enough time or it's a bit hit and miss, but there's the way of getting things off manually if you want to see them. Anyway, many thanks to Creality for sending this over, and of course there'll be a link down below if you want to get one for yourself. Hope the review's been helpful. I will catch you next one. Bye for now. Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.